and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Hi everyone, my guest today is a San Francisco-based artist, and his name is Travis Ruskus. And this is a funny story, of course not too funny for Path 11 podcast listeners, but in July I was at a bluegrass festival, and on one of the hot days my friend and I went down to the creek just to wet our feet because it was pretty hot, and we get down to the creek and I look and there's all of these balanced rocks. And I'm sure most of you have seen rock formations where people have taken these rocks and have balanced them. Well, this is a little bit of what Travis does. And I turned to my friend and I said, "Aren't those so awesome? Do you know how to do that? Have you ever done that before?" And he said, "No." I said, "Yeah, me either." We were just admiring them. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, Travis's book comes across my desk, and it's The Rock Balancer's Guide, Discover the Mindful Art of Balance. So I said, oh my gosh, I have to have him on the show because I want to learn how to balance rocks. So Travis, welcome to the show, and that's one of the reasons why you're here. I kind of felt like it was one of those moments asking you shall receive.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for having me here, and timing is everything. So
yeah,
let's do it.
I couldn't believe it. And so I started to, read your book. Beautiful pictures and illustrations. I love your website and all of the photography that you also do as well with these rock sculptures. And I have been to San Francisco before, and I think, gosh, that was actually, I don't think it was you, but one of the first times I ever saw one was in San Francisco, down like that windy, I remember it's that famous street that you guys have there. But so I'm just always fascinated by these sculptures and the fact that you make it really easy and you teach people how to do it. I have not yet had the opportunity to do this yet, but I am hoping I get to do it this fall in my next hike up on the mountain. So why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself and how you got into photography, balancing rocks, and how you kind of use this as a mindfulness and meditation practice.
Yeah, and something that's really crazy is normally when you come across it, it's kind of like up in the wild, or you just see it standing. And one way I kind of want to differentiate myself is that I'm trying to make it practical, make it so that you, April, can learn this. And actually, when you're seeing it, just pick up a rock and go try it, because ultimately the only thing that's stopping us is ourselves. There's like this barrier of, oh my God, that's amazing, I could never do that. And that's what I'm trying to address, because how many other times in our life do we do that? So for me, rock balancing has taught me how to step into failure, kind of push past it, and I just want to share that experience with others. So how I got into this art form it is a bit of a long story, and I'm getting better at summarizing it. And the short summary is that I was at my rock bottom, and I had left my career, left my relationship, and I was just in this river one day, and I picked up this rock in like such a sad state. I think we open ourselves up to kind of the moment, and what's kind of what you're saying with, hey, you're seeing these rock balances, and then all of a sudden this rock balance book comes across your table. There's a lot of things that are getting shown to us that our minds can kind of ignore, because we're getting caught up in the storyline of who we are and what we need to do and who we should be, rather than just embracing who we are. And our dreams are getting manifested, and we're blocking that essentially. So for me, what happened, how I started is I just picked up a rock one day, and then I tried to balance it in the most difficult way possible. And after 45 minutes of struggle, I didn't have anything, and I just learned to kind of let go of this ego. My ego just became exhausted, and I'm feeling, okay, which side does it fall? And once you start to figure out, okay, there's a center point of mass and gravity in this stone, it locks into place. It like clicks into place, and it feels almost like a handshake with God or spirit, or just the energy that gave you life. And it's almost as if there's a higher sense of self that comes in through you and acknowledges itself through rock balancing. It's kind of meta and deep, if you can go there. But on a very surface level, you just pick up a rock and balance it. And what happens is essentially your consciousness gets into those rocks. And if you see a pile of rocks or a rock balance, it's somebody's energy in those rocks. And I think that's really crazy. And one thing that I really want to quickly address at the very beginning is to make sure that when you rock balance, that you knock over your balances at the end of your session. Because what's happened is rock balancing has become this almost expression of ego of, hey, how many rocks can I balance, and then leave so everyone can acknowledge my ego once I'm not there. And I guess you could say my photos of these rock balances are that, but I'm trying to get the viewer to reflect on themselves. When I go to these very extreme places within myself and make a rock balance beyond what I think is possible, and then beyond that too, I'm just trying to show that to the viewer of, hey, anything is possible if you're willing to believe it is. And it's just showing that discovery process and sharing that with others. That's what I really want to do with this whole thing.
Awesome. Well, I want to go a little bit deeper into that conversation that you were talking about,
cool.
About connecting with the divine and how something kind of moves through you. I know in some of the the questions and looking at this, that you also make mention that you can unlock ancient wisdom through rock balancing. And I would have to say,
yes,
admittedly, I probably first looked at this as this is a great meditation tool for people who say they can't meditate, they don't want to sit down, they're more active people. I would say go out and, try this technique because it's a very mindfulness practice. But yeah, let's talk more about going a little bit deeper into the spiritual awareness and connection that happens, which I think happens to any artist that is creating art. I believe all artists are channelers, that they are open, they channel information, they give it to us to contemplate, to feel, to hear, to see, to heal. And I would love for you to talk more about that connection.
That is very true with the artist insight. That's great. And my favorite birthday gift I give to others is a rock, not just because I'm the rock balance guy, but if you think that you're old, and I it's great for my parents' friends and all this kind of stuff, because they're turning 65, 70 plus, and they think, okay, I'm old, I've at the end of it, this has been a fun run, I'm just hanging on as long as I can. And I give them a rock and I say, okay, if you think you're old, how old is this rock? And most people can't come up with an answer regardless of their age, but especially the ones who are older, they're thinking, damn, that rock is pretty old. I'm pretty young compared to this really, really old million-year-old rock. And that, to me, when I picked up that rock that first day, that first moment I balanced, I just held the rock and I thought to myself, how old is this rock? And when I had my hand holding it and the fingertips surrounding that rock being so young compared to something so old, I thought there's got to be a reason that I'm here at this point in all of this millennia. There has to be a reason that I'm here, because why else would I be here? Is it, yes, a random occurrence of atoms? It could be. But the more that I live through life and I put my intentions out in the world, it kind of reimbursed, kind of like this podcast right here. It's just something where I wanted to share this message, and all of a sudden these interviews are starting to pile on, and that's something that, yes, I have control of a little bit, but at the same time you're tapping into something deeper. And that's sort of the ancient wisdom that I'm talking about, of the spiritual forces that we can't necessarily see, but we can feel. And we can go into a whole discussion on that, but for the most part, I just think that our nature tells us everything that we need to know. And if you look at how a tree grows, especially here in San Francisco, there's such a contrast of city and nature. And when you see trees growing on the side of the street, to be so big, and you see how they're kind of perfectly imperfect, it makes me think about my own growth process. And when I work with others in workshops, how they feel like they have to be this perfect building that's worth millions of dollars, but why can't you just be a tree that flows nice and big and strong and goes with the wind? And that's really where that reconnection to earth can make somebody have a really nice home and become that perfect building.
Well, another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about with rocks, and have your interviews and requests for interviews increased more this year by any chance?
Yes, of course, because the book is out. It's a great tool for me to kind of march behind this.
Okay. Well, the reason why I ask is in this ancient African tradition, Malidoma Somé, you may want to read some of his stuff, but a year that ends in the number 9, and I have to look up what the other year is, but when the year ends in the number 9, it's considered to be the year of mineral. And so there's a whole mineral ritual that you do in the 9 year. And so earlier this year, I had a women's wellness series together, and part of the mineral ritual is literally to be buried among the rocks, to have the rocks on you, to absorb that ancient wisdom, to absorb the messages that they have to give. And in this teaching, he says that because mineral, like you said, is so old, that it carries our stories, that it can awaken us, it can awaken the bones, awaken our purpose. So usually, like the 9 year of 2019, a lot of people may be waking up to their purposes because it's the element of mineral. So I think it's interesting that your book came out this year. You have more interviews.
Right.
You're working with the element of mineral, with these beautiful rocks. And to me, it's almost like, wow, the mineral has really responded to you in the year that it's most present. In 2020, we're going into an earth year. So the energy of earth will be different. Every year carries a different energy. I'm sure you've seen too.
Yeah, that's super cool. I also have almost a question. It's something that I know and I've heard, but I can't really nail down exactly where it's from. And it's in an Eastern religion that they believe rocks are trapped souls, that if you have, you don't treat life well and you take a lot from it, your next reincarnation is going to be a rock. And rocks definitely break down over time and they can be freed. But I like to think of that when I'm balancing these rocks as, what if it is these different souls that I'm balancing here?
Wow.
Do you know anything about that? Have you ever heard anything of that?
No, I haven't, but the first thing that comes to mind, it's an older movie called The Labyrinth. And I remember there's like these rock people where they kind of, they awaken and they start talking. I think it's David Bowie is the main person there. No, I haven't heard of that, but that piques my interest and it makes me want to investigate it a little bit more. And that goes pretty deep, because what do we really know, but what if that is true? And to think that there's a soul in there and your hand is touching it and there could be something within the balancing of what you're doing that's helping their energy to balance, to be freed for their next incarnation.
Yeah, sure. And even with what a rock balance is, for thousands of years, this practice has been going on as cairns, they're frequently called, and just trail markers where, I'm lost and hey, I see there's some source of life. I must be on the right path. And if you see those repeatedly, then it's guiding you home or to your destination. And one thing that has happened over time is as the country's lines start to become almost stronger, I'm finding that our perception of what a rock balance is quite different. And here in the United States, a rock balance is something that is kind of illegal and frowned down upon because, you're taking beautiful earth, moving it, and then you're having this expression of ego and leaving. So I'm trying to change that a little bit of, hey, yes, as long as you respect that you don't touch any animal or plant life, I think you have a total right as, being a human on this planet to balance your energy. And once you come to this place within yourself and connect with the earth, then you knock over the rocks to where they once were, and the cycle continues. So regardless of what country you're in, if you can have that mindset, that will help anyone who's getting on your case, or also you'll help yourself of, this circle of life. Now, when you go to Japan, it's super custom that when you see these cairns on the trails, that you add an extra rock for good luck as you cross the path. And it's just something simple like that, where it's still humans interacting with rock, but because you're surrounded by others who share a similar belief of, oh, you see that? Yes, you add one more, you add one more, you add one more. oh, in the United States, if you see one, you complain, or, you have a different reaction. And I just think that at a very, very core level, humans are drawn to rock balancing. And what usually happens when people view my work, either in person or, when I go to these places within myself to just capture this moment of balance, there's this instant, I can't do that. And this amazement followed by doubt is so interesting to me. And I'm trying to cut through that doubt and just, put a rock in your hand. You have to start. It's like watching the NBA or something and thinking, oh, I can never play basketball like that. But yeah, have you tried to, shoot a 3-pointer? Just sure, maybe you may not be in the NBA, but you can still play basketball and learn from the art form itself. So I could keep going wherever you want me to, but
yeah, sure. Well, maybe this might be a good point too. I know it's a little bit difficult as people are listening, but you do have some videos on your website where you give visual demonstrations for those who learn easier through visual context. But if you're an auditory listener, maybe you can describe what the process is. Like I know you said, start with your first rock, and eventually the more you practice, the quicker, the process can be. Like you said, your first time was 45 minutes. It's been narrowed down to 45 seconds. It doesn't take you very long to be able to do this, but that there is kind of a locking point in what we're looking for as we are trying to balance these rocks.
Yes. The real tactical, tangible secret is you're just looking for a little tiny triangle of balance. So you want to pretend like you're just finding a little triangle, and what you're balancing on should have a little groove, almost like a golf ball dimple, where you're finding almost a little hole, and then where that rock makes contact, the one that you're trying to balance on top of, you just want to pretend like you're balancing on a little tiny triangle. And after a while, once you feel the rock, as it kind of falls one way, you correct it. You can also spin it, rotate it a little bit to see if that helps, and then it'll click into place, and you've achieved the balance that you thought was impossible. Before you get to that, though, what I like to really make sure people understand is you just got to breathe, like take a breath and feel yourself in the moment, because this can be rock balancing, but it can also be writing emails or driving in traffic. And rock balancing is just a metaphor for anything. Because when you look at it, you see, I'm looking at one right now called Healing, which had a bunch of different rocks on top of each other, but they were spaced out. So the more that I look at this over time, I think of the relationships around me and who these big rocks represent. And my mind just naturally goes there. And I think we have this ability with art to think of metaphor and how it translates to our daily life. So, if you're driving in traffic, you can't go balance a rock real quick, but you can take a breath and just kind of let go of any tension, which is easier said than done. But if you just take a breath, this is the moment right now, in any moment. So if you're out on the beach balancing, just tap in the moment, take a breath, try to experience the smell of the waves crashing or the trees around you, the wind blowing if you're not by water. And you'll be able to create much better balances if you're not holding yourself back of, oh man, I can't believe that guy said this email to me about this and I just can't get over it. And, I put so much effort into this. Things like that are going to affect the rock balance and are going to affect how you drive in traffic. But if you can take a breath, reset, it's so transformative. And I have seen that on the beach in one thing that comes to mind right now is how I had some woman have a panic attack on the beach. And she had mentioned to me on her way down, oh yeah, I'm really stoked. It's been a year since I couldn't leave my house and I was just so scared and I had so much anxiety and stuff. And she was from Washington or Oregon up there, and she came down to San Francisco and I was leading these workshops down at the beach. And to just be at the beach at sunset with 7 other people, and everyone was having an amazing time sort of discovering, oh my gosh, this is myself, this is my energy, I am feeling balanced, I am having clarity. And this woman is just having incredible, almost trauma. Just, oh my, I can't be here right now. And we were enough on the beach where it was not a bit of a hike, but a little bit of a hike to get back to where the parking lot was. So she felt like she couldn't find it, and we didn't have any service, and long story, but ultimately I'm like, hey, why don't you try and balance your way out of it? And for her to find the power of her breath first was transformative. And then when she had the act of this big rock that really represented the stress and the tension the burden that she was feeling of this panic, and she balanced through it. And I went and I didn't want to give her too much attention, because I think that's what she was really craving, and I focused on other people one at a time, and I came back to her, and she had this big rock balance, and another one on top of that, and another one on top of that, and the smile that was beaming from her was just incredible. And I'm not saying this to inflate my own power as a teacher. It's just stuff like that surprises me, because I think, hey, we're going to go down there and, we're going to find our balance and become mindful and all this stuff. But I'm not thinking, hey, you're going to transform from your panic attack. And later I heard from her, and she just wrote the most amazing review of the experience, and just talking about how she was doing it at home now. And she had a local little beach that she never thought to go balance rocks now, but she can't find her, she can't rip herself away from that spot. And over time, I'm sure less and less she's given her that rock balance time, but ultimately it's just showing that it's possible. And it's almost a portal or a gateway or the top of a mountain that you have to achieve that experience. You have to go through that balance experience to see what's on the other side of it. And breathing is a very, very important part of that. And that's, one of many. And that's why I love this work, is that rock balancing transcends the color of your skin, your religion, what age you are. And that's sort of this ancient wisdom of, no matter who you are or what you judge, the earth is still there for you. But on that note, what ends up happening at the beach, a very, very common thing, is that there's this paralysis of choice. And with the internet and the world we live in, there's a lot of podcasts out there. What makes somebody listen to this one? It's rooted in the question of, do you choose the rocks or do the rocks choose you? So is this podcast something that someone was like, hey, I'm thinking about this, and then I'm going to tap on this or see my subscriptions, and oh, that's cool. It's more of, this podcast is being drawn to someone at the perfectly right time, just as when you're balancing on the rocks, these rocks are coming to you. And I really wish that I could explain an easier way to select rocks, but you just got to trust your intuition and go from there. So once you have rocks, that's where you do that tripod, and you figure out, okay, where's my edge and how can I go beyond it? And when you have that mentality, it's really transformative, because, wow, you're just popping bubbles over and over and over. And you got to make sure that you don't get caught up in the just one more mindset, because this is paralyzing, because no matter how many rocks you balance, you'll never be satisfied. There's always just one more for you to achieve that happiness. And all a rock balance is a point of contentment within yourself. So if you only need to balance one rock on its side and you're totally zen, totally happy, that's amazing. If you need to, go like me, I have to do these crazy counterbalances that are multiple rocks on top of multiple rocks, and you can't even picture it in your head of the kind of stuff that I'm at now, because I continue to go to this edge. I still find with myself, I'm like, okay, let's come back to reality. My vision is too far. I have to meet reality with it. And just defining these limits it's a very debatable topic of, where are the limits exactly, but you'll know. There'll be, for myself, when I know is when my hands start to shake right at the very end. I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting away with something. I'm at the edge, let's not push it. And from there, that's when I feel content. And of course, you can unpack that of, why am I not happy with one rock? And to a certain extent, I am, but I am trying to push the limits of our world and what we see is truly possible, because there's many things wrong with the world, but one of them I feel is how we are treating our space program as sort of this like, oh, we did this kind of thing, but in reality, what are we actually doing to unify the world in order to grow beyond that? And we're so busy fighting each other with these political things that we're not able to connect as a whole. And because of that, so many repercussions happen. And that kind of opened the door into a whole new topic. But it's really just showing what these limits are, because they're pretty false. And I think that with a lot of war, that is direct limits of saying, hey, I can only do this. Oh, you can't do that. Okay, let's fight each other. But, what is beyond that? There's not really ever a discussion about that. So after that, then I like to, just to kind of complete the circle here, once you have your limit and you're like, okay, this is it, I'm happy with it, just sit with it, sit with yourself. Don't judge yourself, just be happy with where you are in the moment. And this is easier said than done, but there's times when I make balances that I know, hey, it's not my greatest work of art ever, but I'm here, I found the time to make it, and I'm just going to enjoy it. And after that, release and let go and knock the balance over. And this can also be one of the hardest things to do in the workshops, because we're attached. We're like, hey, I've just spent so much time pouring my energy and love into this thing, and you're saying I have to kill it, I have to destroy it. And I'm saying, yeah, because when you hang on to one moment, the next moment is much more difficult to enter, because we're so busy squeezing onto something our hands can't be filled. So when you release, this is just the most amazing look that I get on people's face of just almost freedom. And it translates so much into real world and daily life, because when we are hanging on to the stuff in our house, it no longer serves us. It reminds us maybe of an event or something like that. But when we can let go of that, it is super transformative. And I just recently moved into a new place and had to do that. And living in San Francisco, you kind of have to do it repeatedly, and you figure out, what am I hanging on to? Why is this stuff serving me, really? So the whole release thing directly translates into daily life. So that's really kind of the whole technique, I think, to answer your question here of how do you do it is, it's, yes, you balance the little triangle, but you also want to breathe, find the opportunity around you, believe in yourself enough to do it, balance it, find your limits, and then once you found your limits, release.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, intent moves consciousness. So maybe having an intention at your workshops, or if somebody's alone, down by the river or wherever, to do it, you're right. There's so many different metaphors, especially at that releasing and that letting go and not being attached to the formation that you just spent all this time in creating.
Sure.
You could take anything from your past or any current situation, put it into the rocks, create your formation, send it off, let it go to the universe. And, I will say that when you're talking about the different possibilities and the limitness to that, when I look at your rock formations, there are many of them where I have been like, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? I mean, I think I might have said that about 15 times going through your website and looking at the picture. I'm like, how is that possible? And, through that art and through that rock formation, and the rocks themselves are showing us like that. And you're showing us that too, that it really is possible. What you think is impossible is possible. And I think it's beautiful that you're really testing yourself and going beyond those limits and trying to create these creations, because that is the one thing that I received from looking at this and looking at it as kind of art, and just being in awe and inspired to say, there is something in your mind that says, well, if that's possible, anything can be possible, because how are these rocks just balancing? And in this formation, it's wild.
Yeah, and this is really the more I do it, I realize how it is art therapy. It is very healing and transformational for others, and when what someone needs is different than the person next to them, and the rock balancing gives them both what they need. And because there's so many different tangents that you can go down, ultimately the tangent that is perfect for you is what ends up unveiling itself. And it's similar to, giving a talk where I'll talk for an hour and there's really just one line that really resonates with somebody, which could be completely different from somebody else. Rock balancing is that's the thing. So I really like that your whole intent moves consciousness thing. And with that too, every single work that you see embodies a different element that surrounds us all. So the one on the cover is attraction, and showcasing that idea of, okay, when things attract versus when things don't attract, just becoming aware of that feeling of attraction, because that one on the cover actually took 2 days to work through to get these rocks to just find that perfect alignment. And you could say that, hey, if they were meant to attract, they would have done it instantly, like true love or whatever, like someone seeing a donut, that's attraction right there. But if you're working through that, there's a much deeper level of attraction. And sometimes it's not attraction. Sometimes we push ourselves and do things for years that inevitably are never going to attract. So it just, with that addition, I want to just focus on that element of attraction. And another one was healing. And healing was, I think, one of my best works that actually came to me after a breakup. And I was just out there, just, typical sad, trying to find meaning. And I just made this balance in 40 minutes or so. And they can range from 5 minutes to, like I'm saying, 2 days to make these. But that one just flew up, and it had all these different rocks spaced apart. And the whole idea behind the concept of healing is I grow beyond my pain one breath at a time. And it's using the breath to heal yourself from pain. And what was really cool about that specific one is that I had a fan who was in the hospital and said, hey, I watched your videos and I learned how to rock balance to keep myself busy while the doctors were figuring out what was going on to me. And I said, hey, wow, that's crazy. Thank you. First off, I am a person. There isn't just like this invisible thing. You can pop the internet bubble and realize it's just two people connecting. And I said to her, hey, I'm going to go out and make you a rock balance, to honor your healing and to make this balance for her, or in her honor, is just so true and so amazing. And another one real quick is perfection. And that's probably the most, what the hell kind of reaction that I get of what sorcery is this? And I just wanted to make essentially of course, the most difficult rock balance I could, but also what embodies perfection? Can I make a perfect rock balance? And the way I had the counterbalance just pulled so far apart where you barely think that these rocks are just gripping on. The whole idea behind that was letting go of who you should be and embracing who you truly are. And for me, I was kind of upset when I made that balance. I was like, yeah, that's cool, but it could be better. And it's just, the more I reflect on it, it's, sit with it. You are perfect as you are. And I just think it's really cool because these themes, yes, are true in the specific editions, but they're also true in all of them. So every rock balance incorporates healing. Every rock balance incorporates attraction and perfection like that. So I just think it's pretty cool how this has kind of come about. And right now, I just finished up, what was the last one? I did Beyond, so the truth will set you free, and exploring what that freedom feels like. And what was the last one I did? It was so good. I can't think of it at the top of this moment, but if it comes to me, I'll let you know.
You mean on your website, Revolution? That was 180?
Oh, yes, Revolution,
yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, so with Revolution, I was out there, and it was the hottest day of the year here in San Francisco a couple weeks ago. And I'm out on the beach, and I'm thinking, okay, man, I only got an hour. I got to make this great artwork. And really quickly, I could feel that my energy was kind of tense and angry. And something shifted in me, and just something came to me as I'm walking, looking for these stones along the beach. And the thought of start with peace and grow from there just perfectly encompassed not only the moment of me to just, hey, how do I start? Well, you start with peace and you go from there. But I also thought, that's revolution. That's what we need in our politics. What we need when we're talking to each other is starting with peace and then growing from there. Because what happens is we're getting caught up in, let's argue it till we get to peace and then we're good. But no, you got to start with peace, and then that's when the real work begins. So it was just encompassing that feeling within ourselves of the own revolution each of us has to step into. So this is mine right now.
I love it. And, the other thing that I want to mention to the listeners, that one thing that I really liked about your book, and if people want to start this, is you give people starting points. You give people recommendations, different meditations. I mean, you have illustrations and how to do this, but then you also have your YouTube channel. But I like that you give the reader something to contemplate, and you give them exercises with the rocks, before the rocks, before they set up their placing. And, you just talk a lot about breath and how to connect. So it's wonderful. I don't want people to think that it's just a book of pictures of all the rock balances. It's actually pretty deep and reflective. You really make people go inward and question and face their fears, reminding them to breathe and to be contemplative. So it's a great, great book. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I have all friends and family and, random people that are like, oh, that's so cool. And they'll repost the book and they got the book and they're super excited. And then over time, I'm like, did you read it? Is it resonating with you? Because the ones that do, I can tell. I can see that there's a shift in how they're approaching their own limiting beliefs. And I really encourage not only to get it and read it, but to truly read it, to really absorb what's going on, because I just wrote down my truth. As true could be, seeing it with other people. And if you have objections to it, I respect that, but I would highly disagree if you really read into what's happening here.
Yeah. Well, let people know where they can find you. And also, if people are in the San Francisco area, how can they come to your workshops? Where do you teach them? How do they get that information?
Right now, with workshops and stuff, it has to be on a private kind of one-to-one basis, because I'm working through regulations with the national park and stuff for me to continue to have commercial workshops out there. So for right now, it's kind of private. I have to be on private land or a private garden. I love making gardens for people, or just having a workshop. I have this cool thing called the healing room, where I'm going into corporate environments, and an old meeting room, you can just put a couple rocks in there, have some meditation cushions, and people can reserve this space and rock balance and meditate. And just for 5 to 30 minutes, you just go in there and have your own little session. I think that's the coolest thing. It's how that's evolved is crazy. But to get the book, it's just search the Rock Balancer's Guide on Amazon or on my website, travisruskus.com.
Great. Well, Travis, I'm so glad that your book came across my desk at the perfect moment, like you said, at the perfect time. And I am really excited. Once I make my very first rock balance, I'm going to take a picture of it. I will knock it down, don't worry, but I would like to send it to you to show it to you.
Yeah, and for those listening too, send it to me on social media. Send me a picture of your balance, because to me, it's acknowledgement that you're listening and that you are trying. And I get people all day long, it's like, I'm going to try that. But like, if you can really send me the photo, I would love to see it, just to show me and yourself that, hey, you did it.
Did it. Yeah. I'm excited to see, just because I've always been so connected to rocks. When I was little, I would collect them. I mean, we had Maxwell House coffee cans filled with all of these rocks that I would bring in. So for me,
that's super cool.
The mineral kingdom, the rock kingdom, I know that it will be a very healing and deep experience, because they do speak. Rocks speak. If no one believes it, I would say the best way to do it is to find a rock out in nature and sit with it and meditate it and ask what it has to say. And I promise you, it will say something. And when I do that meditation with people, it shocks them, because they're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to hear anything. Is a rock really going to talk? Am I really going to get a message? I'm telling you, they're very wise. They are wise beyond their years, I guess we could say. But Travis, this was great. So thank you so much. And I wish you a lot of luck with all that you're doing. And I just think that it's beautiful work. So thanks again for being a guest on the Path 11 podcast.
Thank you so much for your time. And I really enjoyed this opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Path 11 podcast today. I hope you all enjoyed this show. And if you haven't checked out our Patreon page, I'd like you to do so because we are going to start putting some content over there that is only for our Patreon subscribers. You can get content for as little as donating $1 a month, and it could just be a one-time donation. We have other freebies over there that you can get depending upon how much you would like to donate. And again, it could be a one-time donation, or you can continue to keep your subscription on a monthly basis at that donation level. But I just put my MBT immersive experience, which was a 4-day intensive meditation training in Tennessee with physicist Tom Campbell. I was listening to binaural beats, going to altered states of consciousness, having out-of-body experiences and life-changing experiences that I was able to bring back for myself, for my clients, for my friends. That was just out of this world. So if you would like to listen to that, I'd like you to head on over to path11podcast.com. You're going to see an orange button that says Patreon. Become a Patreon today, and you can have access to that podcast. And I would like to remind you to head on over to path11productions.com and check out the membership that we have for the Afterlife Awareness Conference. We have over 25 hours of footage with amazing speakers like William Buhlman, Thomas John, Terry Daniel, Suzanne Geisman, Suzanne Northrup, Linda Fitch, Austin Wells, just a few people to name off that were amazing. These workshops are just so valuable. So I think that you would really enjoy it. It's also a great thing to think about to maybe give the gift to somebody who is struggling with grief. If you are looking for resources, this is a great conference to send people to check out. And thanks again for listening today.